My name is Apoorv Sinha, and I'm from Calgary, I think, along with a few other people here. We emitted 36 billion tons of CO2 last year, and it was pretty much the same number the year before that and the year before that. But most of us don't spend our time thinking about anything in billions. So to give you some perspective, consider this. If you took the weight of every single human being on the planet, there's 7.6 billion people as of yesterday on Wikipedia, the weight of every single human being, and then you took the weight of the CO2 emissions from just last year, the weight of the emissions from just that 1 year is 100 times more than the weight of every single human being on the planet. Now consider the consequence. CO2 isn't H2S, as some of the oil field people here would know. It's not a sour gas, it doesn't kill people, it's odorless. But it is the second biggest contributor to the greenhouse gas effect, which is warming up our planet at rates that we haven't seen. The first is water vapor, but Mother Nature has a good way of recycling water. We have lakes and rivers and vast oceans that constantly see rain along with our land, and so the water doesn't stay in the atmosphere for huge amounts of time. But CO2, once you emit that gas, stays in the atmosphere for decades, over 80 years. So it's not something that you can repair quite easily. Now, whether we believe in climate change being man-made or not, we should all agree that CO2 and excess CO2 in the environment is an issue. Just like we should all agree that whether we believe in gun control or not, being shot by a gun will hurt and probably kill someone. We should also consider that this argument and the dichotomy between these two facts is the reason why CO2 always loses attention in the public narrative. We think about history and we remember people like Hitler that killed thousands of people. They killed people with guns, with swords, with knives, bombs, and basically everything they had at their disposal. And the reason we remember them, we remember these supervillains, is because their impact was there to see immediately. Those people died right away, within minutes, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. CO2 takes a long time to start killing its people. It takes decades. And so in the age of Instagram and Facebook, I'm almost convinced that if Hitler lived today instead of in the 40s, we'd be horrified even more and we'd be moving at a rapid pace to arrest his vile speed instead of trying appeasement. But CO2 does exist in our age today, and we don't. Consider this. If instead of using shooting squads or concentration camps, what if Hitler recruited the biggest infrastructure firm, the biggest engineering firm in Germany, and started installing lead pipelines across Europe? And instead of killing his people right away, he waited for decades for that lead to start leaching out and killing kids 20, 30, 40 years later. You'd be offended by both, as would I, but I have a feeling that one of them is not as great a tweet as the other, at least not in the time being. And that's really the essence of the issue. Supervillains that are patient, especially patient like CO2, are boring. They don't question your morality or challenge your morality in the blood-boiling avatars of evil like Hitler or Saddam Hussein. They take their time, they wear you down. And CO2 does that really well. In fact, I believe that CO2 is really just a product of our own society and our own progression, instead of being a foreign evil that's imported from another planet. Since the 1800s, humanity around the world has gone through a rapid rate of industrialization. It's created a livelihood and a quality of life for people around the world that is definitely a positive change. But with that has come unabated pollution levels that have only accelerated in the last 200 years. And so we find ourselves today, in 2017, at a place where we have to reverse and undo 200 years of pollution that has only grown in less than half the time to make sure that we have climate change that we can actually manage by 2100. It's important to keep that in mind because it's only 20 or 30 years ago that climate change and the impact of CO2 on the environment even became a part of the public narrative. It's all very new. 3 years ago, I founded a company here in Calgary called Carbon Upcycling Technologies, and what we found is that the CO2 is actually a villain that can be turned. It's not as movie-worthy as if you got Hitler to change his heart, but it's quite interesting nonetheless. In fact, what we found is, instead of emitting CO2 into the atmosphere and into the breathing air that we breathe every day, we can instead convert it into solids, like this prop here. This powder here is about 20% CO2. And what we found is that this can be mixed into materials that we use in our society every day. Materials like concrete, like plastics, like adhesives. even our roads to make them more freeze-thaw resistant and make them better in the winter. And in each of these instances, this material not only sequesters CO2, but actually makes our society better. If we think about turning CO2, probably the most impactful application that we have found is that you can actually take some of this particle, impregnate cancer drugs like doxorubicin onto them, and deliver them into the human body to target cancer more effectively. Incidentally, what that means is you can, because of its low toxicity in the human body, you can take high loads of this material and aggressively cancer tumors that otherwise might be too difficult or too far gone. Just think about that for a second. A pollutant gas like CO2 being used as a part of a cure for cancer. I think patient supervillains do have one weakness. They allow us enough time to maybe use that time wisely and overcome their devious plans. I believe CO2, in a sense, maybe offers a solution to its own challenges. Humanity has advanced through a lot of ages. Our modern history started in the Stone Age, and through the copper, the iron, the Bronze Ages, we're now in the Information Age. And through each of these progressions, we've been able to learn and improve the quality of lives of all the people that have come to our world. But that has also come with challenges, and some of these challenges we're able to resolve quickly, others take decades of patience and diligence. T.S. Eliot said, "We shall not cease from exploration," and at the end of all our exploring, we find ourselves back where we started, only to know the place for the first time. So I take my talk back to CO2, with both its magnitude of emissions as well as its potential place in society in mind. Because I believe that the next stage will be the carbon age, an age where our own largest emission will be used to make our society more efficient, whether it be our buildings, the plastics, the cars we drive in, or even the medicine that we use to treat our biggest ailments. I look forward to seeing you in that future, and I look forward to being with you in our journey there. Thank you.